Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, folks, John Duffin here, Duffin Media, Duffin Coaching. Welcome back to another session of Optimize Your Communications by Leveraging Your Voice. Today, we get to do 3 top tips to help you do exactly that. So first off, thanks so much for joining me. Love it. If you're catching me on Facebook Live, great. YouTube Live, great. LinkedIn Live, welcome one and all. So the whole purpose and point is literally 3 tips, 3 situations, 3 solutions. Sometimes we throw in a bonus as well too, but here's what we don't do. We don't go overly long, right? So the fact that you've invested even a minute means the world to me. So the whole deal is to not monopolize your time. And by the way, it's Halloween, so maybe you've got family or kids, or you've got an office Halloween party, so you don't need to be tied up for hours. I'm promising you. I'm going to be out of here probably putting on my trick-or-treat outfit, which is pretty much this, in less than a half hour. So that's the whole point as well, too. Anybody wants to chime in? Hey, and I get to see a lot of the comments. So if you are in front of a phone, computer, wherever you may be, I welcome you. So look, here's what I was thinking about today. By the way, if you have joined me in the past, then you know I often lead with a question. So here's the question. I typically ask the similar one, which is this. Have you ever had a conversation, presentation, or encounter in business where you've received surprisingly negative feedback? You felt like you were tearing it up, whether you were on the phone or in front of an audience or on a Zoom session, but you got negative feedback as a result, or even worse, apathy, dead air, right? And you couldn't understand why. I really am coming to believe all the more that it has so much to do. Could it be your voice? Yeah, maybe. Look, today's session was inspired. Sarah Schneider, if you are watching on any of these platforms, you can know that I tailored today's tips to the comments that Sarah had made. And so I'm going to ask general questions. If you want to answer them, great. Drop a note in the comments. I will see them. But the general questions, do you work in customer service? Do you lead a team in customer service? Is your profession client service? By the way, client service, customer service, if you are interfacing with clients in any way, let me know that. If you, again, lead teams, if you're sales teams, I came from media, advertising, television, digital, streaming sales. Did that for, God almighty, over 25 years, right? And so I know that whether I was doing the selling myself or leading or training, that it was really important to me, the presentation dynamic. And I'll ask you this. Has anyone yet had the opportunity where they've had to deal with client service people? So you're on the other end of the phone or the other end of the Zoom session. Yeah, you got that right. Look, I'm laughing because the inspiration was this, that very often I have a really low tolerance for telemarketers, client service people, customer service people. And I feel bad about that because I came from that world, from the client services side, right? Our job was to optimize situations, to drive revenue, but really it was to make the clients happy. So right off the bat, hey, by the way, one of the ground rules that I talk about is this. When I do these 3 tips, I typically don't make people wait really long. So let me just get right to it, okay? So your tip number 1, have you encountered people just not engaged? Have you encountered when you've either made a phone call, been on a Zoom session where they've been distracted? Yeah, yep, you got that right. God almighty. Yep. See, here's the problem. Distractions are death in relation to sales, revenue generation, client relationships, progressing up or down a ladder, getting the job, keeping the job. Here's the deal. I call this tip, water the plants. I know it looks weird. I put a couple of the recent plants that I've gotten and I love them. But if I don't water them, they don't hang around. Plants, in this case, if you're speaking at a meeting, this is either in person or Zoom, it helps so much to focus on an individual. So often when we're speaking, we feel like we have to present to the room, to the audience, to this generic faceless base of people, even when we know some of the people. The very first thing I would tell you, you want to increase your engagement in any sort of a conversation, focus on an individual. If there are two or more people that are in a room, sales presentation, employee engagement, meeting, whatever the case may be, team meeting, focus on individuals. Now, you don't want to weird them out and make them uncomfortable. You don't want to freak them out by staring at them, right? But what I would say is this. How this really matters, how this winds up relating is this. You feel like if you're going to be speaking to this broad base team meeting, you're going to learn, you're going to train your team better client-related techniques, sales techniques, presentation techniques, whatever. So often you want to speak to everybody collectively and equally. Well, here's what happens. You wind up speaking to nobody. And that's the problem because you're just painting this broad stroke. So my very strong suggestion, two or more people, focus on an individual. Maybe it's one thought, one focus. One thought, one focus. You can shift, you can move. You can, in essence, have that scenario where it can be a case where it's like, okay, I'll focus on you for this thought. I'll now focus on you for this thought. And now, don't jog your head around in like because it's distracting. But simply, the plants, find the people. If you don't know who to pick, find somebody you know. That's a plan. Right? Somebody that you know, somebody you happen to like, focus on them for a moment to get your bearings, but do focus on an individual. Okay. Now that tends to be in person. All right. Any questions on that? And by the way, if there are any questions, I will gladly handle them right now on this call, on this Zoom session, or I will gladly respond individually, So what I'm going to say right off the bat, by the way, I'm putting up an opportunity that I'm going to make available to anyone who is watching. I just put up, this is to me, a great PDF sheet that I've put up in regards to voice techniques. It'll cost you nothing. Click the link. It obligates you to nothing. But what it does is to get you a little bit closer in regards to techniques that you can utilize to optimize your communications, again, by leveraging your voice. So that's the first one. I want to show you the second one, which is really a personal favorite of mine. Okay. So you got to remember, here's the foundation. When I say it only matters if it matters to them, it's our job, whether it's people that you know, complete strangers, somewhere in the middle of the relationship chain. It's really important that it's got to matter to them. And it's your responsibility. And your responsibility is not to shove it down somebody's throat. Your message, your outbound message, your presentation, your bullet points. It's not to force feed it to somebody. Making someone care when you're speaking to them doesn't sound like this. And tell me if you've ever heard this before, right? So, and I might be explaining something to the effect, and that's why you should use, again, remember, I came from television, and that's why you should use this program to reach your audience to buy cars, because we have the collective data that says that more people watch this program and drive cars. Here's what it doesn't sound like. And do you see where I'm going? Do you see why this should matter? You don't want to sound condescending. You don't want to sound as if you're shoving it down somebody's throat. Again, remember, your voice is the last pass. I reference a lot of people in regards to the people that I've either experienced directly, trained with. One of the people that I've worked with is Dave Walsh. He has a business called The True Tell. His whole deal in terms of business and your voice is the last pass in regards to how information is conveyed. That's what somebody feels, the vibration of your voice. So if you sound disinterested, if you sound rushed, if you sound bored, if you sound nervous, all of those things are distractions, and I guarantee you, I always talk about authenticity. The problem is you are also you're very authentic if you're coming off as distracted or bored or disinterested or nervous. That's an authentic reaction. It's just not a good one. So it's really important to keep in mind the following. It has to matter to them. I'll ask you this. Next time you're leading a sales meeting, next time you are ready to make a batch of phone calls, right? If you're in real estate, happen to be a licensed realtor, where lead generation, I'm going to focus 2 hours on calling 60 people, and I'm just going to keep dialing, keep dialing, keep dialing. Show of hands, and maybe the show of hands can literally be when you've made a series of calls. How many people do you think you're getting in that 2-hour stretch that actually talk to you? 0. Somebody just said 0. I love that. 0. Well, you hope it's more than 0, but let me tell you from first-hand experience, nobody wants to pick up the phone anymore. And those that do, you think, oh, here's my opportunity. Well, often it's the opposite, that they're just frustrated and want to get you off the phone. So I bring up it only matters if it matters to them. Keep this thought in mind. Most social media content that you're scrolling and paying attention to, you got a couple seconds to get somebody's engagement. Imagine if you were making an outbound phone call to somebody and you in a couple of seconds has to get someone's attention in a good way. It really, go back to this mantra, it only matters if it matters to them. So what can you do, right? I'll give you a classic example. For me, I took a consulting position. This was last year. And the whole purpose was for me to secure appointments for companies. I would make the calls for a period of time. It wasn't a great fit for me, but not because there was anything wrong with the position. Everything was very right about it. But here's what I came to learn. So few people answer the phone that it becomes like a mental test. So when somebody actually picks up, are you able to stand in the box, to use a sports analogy? Are you able to stand in the box and in a couple of seconds convey warmth, authenticity? Here's your tip. Oh, by the way, here was what happened to me. I remember making a series of calls one day. Nobody's picking up the phone. Nobody. I'm swinging for the fences too. I'm calling these top-level CEOs at this top-level company. And then in about an hour, and I mean a solid hour, no one picked up. At the end of the hour, I think it was the CEO who picks up the phone. Right. So I remember, what did I do? I had an hour to get right with somebody picking up the phone. I got so excited that I just started to talk too fast. And this is what he literally says to me. I remember, like, slow down, slow down. So I feel like an amateur at this point. Now, I've only been making these phone calls and engaging clients for 25 years, and I literally felt like a rookie on my first day. But here's what he did, and this part was great. He enabled me to continue the conversation. He could have just hung up, could have told me to get lost, could have just disconnected. He didn't. Slow down, slow down. So I did. And he enabled and allowed me to get my thought across. That was actually really good fortune. And what happened as a result of it, I became more authentic, even though in the beginning it was weird. And remember, this is all happening in seconds. So I I wildly encourage you to do the following. Remember that even if you're doing a series of phone calls and you're thinking, that's right, I'll get the next one, I'll get the next one, I'll get the next one. Each one matters because you don't get as many opportunities as you even did 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, right? So I'm saying with all of that, it's really important that you're optimizing each opportunity. So how do you make it matter to somebody? Simple. Adjust your tone in the beginning to an engaging perspective. Screaming at somebody isn't going to work. Speed dialing isn't going to work. But get to it. Literally get to it. Speak to them in a tone of voice that sounds authentic and compassionate. It's really important that somebody gets the idea that they want to have the conversation with you. So it only matters when it matters to them. Use your voice in a way that someone would want to hear you. Interested, empathetic with them, right? Those to me are really important. Any questions on that? All right, beautiful. So we're going to go to the third one. By the way, here is my personal favorite, and I'm calling it tone, right? But it's really important to talk to people, not at them. This is a little bit similar to when we were talking before about what are the plans, but I'm going to get more specific here. The tone. When you're talking to either, say you're on Zoom. Look, we're on StreamYard today. How many people are still doing virtual calls or participating in them, leading them? Yeah, thank you. Yes, a lot of people still, even though the offices are opening up more and more, Zoom, StreamYard, Riverside, whatever the platforms happen to be, you still got virtual calls. Technically, you think you're talking to people, but you're actually talking to no one. You're staring at a computer screen. You shouldn't even be trying to make eye contact with the individuals on the call because it doesn't allow you to. If I start looking over here or over there to try to find you in the corner, it looks weird, right? So you're having these technically imaginary conversations. So what do? Here's the tip. It's not just the broadcast ad sales, but it's the voiceover for the last 4 years that's enabled me to not just keep up, but flourish in regards to my communicative ability. So here's what I'm going to say. You're always speaking to a person. Now, if it's a virtual call, you may need to use a little bit of imagination because really the tech part of this is you're typically looking into the lens of the computer or your camera, which gives you the impression of making eye contact. You probably all know that, but you do know you need to be looking at the lens to at least give the impression that you're actually speaking to somebody rather than me over here, which then just looks nuts. So technically, I look like I'm looking at you. The truth of the matter is I'm not, right? So I've got to, in my mind, create an impression that I'm actually having a conversation. And here's how you can win in business in regards to leading any sort of a virtual conversation. Number one, always look at the lens. Always, right? You can glance down at a note. That's fine. You're human. You're not a bot, right? And this is not AI. So you're going to literally, as I said again, you're going to focus, look down, but 95% of the time, try to stay with the camera lens. And then number two, the tip, talk to people, not at people. Here's the situation. From that voiceover land, what I've been able to do is this. I've had one of my favorite voice trainers, Kelly McGee. If you were anywhere near this session, I hope you are. I love Kelly McGee. She is one of the best talented voiceover artists and teachers. She does a ton of give back. And she's also an incredibly nice person. And it was Kelly McGee that taught me, you're always speaking to someone. So If I'm doing a voiceover narration, the 3 questions: who am I talking to? Literally, who specifically? Where are you when you're having the conversation? Are you in a conference room? Are you in a boardroom? Are you talking to your friend Pete, my buddy Pete? I say, am I talking to him in a specific place? 3, why does it matter to him that we're having the conversation? Get away from the why does it matter to you. Why does it matter to the person? But this is really the part that I've loved, and it really worked great for me. I'm saying tone. Your whole tone is going to shift when you have a conversation with a specific person. Focus in your mind, especially if it's virtual. Who exactly are you talking to? What's their name? Where are you? Pick a place. Imagine it if it's going to be. And then, like, why would it matter to them? Back to what we were talking about before, it only matters if it matters to them. Here's your chance to use it. So this is the imagination part. You don't have to, again, this is not acting. It's all about authenticity. You want to be having a real conversation, whether it's virtual, whether it's phone, whether it's in person. People want authenticity. Some of my tactics and techniques apply for in person. Today, where I wanted to focus was when you are either on the phone or virtual. You're focusing on individuals. You are creating a scene where you're actually having a conversation. A phone blitz or a customer service team, they need to be doing more than rattling off scripts. It's wildly ineffective. First off, you're going to talk to almost nobody. And then on those rare chances that you do, well, then you won't be effective. So how can you be effective? The 3-tip recap today is this. Number 1, I call it water the plants. If you're in front of somebody, 2 or more people, focus one at a time when you're speaking to them. Don't worry, they're not going to freak out. Don't make them freak out. But the plants, you don't know who to pick. You're at a client presentation, you're at a team meeting. Look for 1 or 2 favorites. Why? They're going to make you feel better. They're going to adjust your body language and your tone of voice to become more conversational. The plants, they're the plants. Ideally, if you can pick where you're looking, it's great. If you don't have anybody in the room that you want to lean into when you're speaking, find the one that's smiling. Find the one that's nodding. That's your first. This gets rid of the disengagement or distraction. People want to be able to focus. They just don't want it in a time where they're feeling as if nobody's talking to me. None of this applies, right? And then, as I said, the old ever popular, it only matters if it matters to them. They are going to hear it in your voice. So you get a limited amount of time to speak to somebody, to make an impression. Again, use the tone of voice to show enthusiasm, natural enthusiasm. Again, if you only got a few seconds, you want to sound like it actually, you have the energy that you are doing it, but don't scream at people. Don't race through a message, because again, you're just going to literally blow them off the phone. Interest, natural engagement, natural in terms of enthusiasm too, right? And in number 3, you're always speaking to somebody. If it's a virtual conversation, a team meeting, Microsoft Teams, or whatever the case may be, the fact of the matter is you want to be fully engaged. If it means using a little bit of imagination to create a scenario in your mind that you're having a conversation at someone's home, or you're literally in an office, or you're in the community room of your office, paint the picture. And then lastly, just remember that sense of why does it matter to them? Because when it matters to them, you're coming from a place of service. Okay? So to me, those 3 tips you could utilize today. Oh, question real fast that we've got as well too. And thank you for asking that question, by the way. Does it feel disingenuous if you're imagining another person? Well, that depends. So I typically like to keep it close to the base. Like, I don't want to picture I'm having a conversation with Britney Spears if I'm talking to the CEO of X. Britney Spears seems to be getting a lot of attention lately. Good for her. The fact of the matter is, but what I will say is, I like to keep it reasonably close. A business colleague. But if you're leading any sort of a virtual call, if you're in a room with your team or you're presenting at a team meeting and there's a bunch of people, again, this is it, you want to really focus on an individual. And any way that you can do that is going to make your voice sound more true, right, naturally engaged. And I'm telling you, you never have to get your whole script out in 20 seconds. You don't. You don't have to race through your bullet points. You don't have to talk so slow that somebody thinks there's something wrong with you. You don't want to sound distracted. You don't want to sound like you're reading. And the best way to demonstrate this, how would you normally talk to somebody? How would you talk to somebody when something matters, but it's a natural enthusiasm, not a cheerleading, I can't wait to. So focus on an individual. One person, 1,000 people, I promise you that it's going to pay off. It has worked for me. I hope these tips work for you. And folks, one more time, I'm going to do the following, which is this. So I want to make it really easy for you to find me. Questions, comments, anything like that. By the way, we always wrap this up. We are going to make this at that 30-minute mark. I'm excited for that too, because I honor you and I honor your time. So we've got the 3 tips. If you want to go into any more detail in terms of specificity, specific situations, or your specific needs, or your team's specific needs, there's 2 ways we can do this. Number one, on the screen, you got my QR code. Just click, take the photo of the QR code. It'll drive you right to my website, where you will have ways to contact me. All my social media platforms are there, my podcast and all that sort of thing. So you can learn anything and everything that you want to learn about me. So to me, that's all there for you. Click the QR code and you'll get to my Duffin Media website. Secondly, I am putting in this opportunity. Here's something that I love in regards to, one more time, disability. It's a sheet that I pulled together in regards to your voice and ways to sound like a pro, whether you're in person, but in this case, whether you're using virtual and you want to sound good. And sound good is authentic. No one's needing to sound like a DJ or an announcer. It's the best version of you. And I'll leave you with this. Look, the reason it matters so much to me that you sound authentic is because that's the most pure, true version of you. And who wouldn't want that for you, right? When you're at your best, most true, great things seem to happen. So, if there are any other questions, I will happily field them. Nick Mershon, yay, baby. I don't know. Listen, thank you, pal. I love the fact that you showed up for me today. You're absolutely awesome. Let's go is right. Happy Halloween to everybody out there. You are seeing my outfit right now. If you got kids, like I know my buddy Nick does, then get out there and have some fun. Grab some listen, happy Tuesday and Halloween right back at you, man. I'm thrilled that I get to make the time with all of you today. Use the tips. Any questions, click that QR code, find me, and I'll answer anything you need. Have a fantastic day, all. I'm delighted you showed up for me. Be well, and we will talk soon. Bye.